Hey, if you're new to video and you're filming outside, you've got a problem. And that problem is that the sun is blowing out everything that you're filming. Well, in this video, I've got a solution for you, and it's called a neutral density filter, and that video is going to start right now. Let's jump right into this. What's the best neutral density filter to use if you're shooting outdoors and you're trying to use a frame rate of 24? Is that the way to say that? 24 my frame rate. Your frame rate's 24. Or you're shooting at 24 frames per second. I kind of like that better. What is the best all-around filter for that? The best all-around filter for that, in my opinion, is a 6-stop ND64 or ND64 neutral density fixed filter. This is going to allow you to shoot in 24 frames per second or at a frame rate of 24, keeping that nice cinematic look. Maybe you want to use a shallow depth of field. A shallow depth of field is going to keep things a little bit more cinematic, so you can shoot at f1.8 or even an f2.8 with a little bump in the ISO. In addition to that, it's a very flexible filter. You can use it in photography as well. I tend to use a 10-stop in photography, but the 6 works great for certain situations like waterfalls and stuff like that. And it's very flexible if you're going to go and try and shoot some slow-mo at 60 frames per second. And I'm going to explain why towards the end of this video, so stick around. I've got a chart that I made up just for people that are doing video. If you've been online, you'll see that there is nothing out there. It's all based on photographers and shutter speed, which doesn't help us. As a new person to video, or as somebody who's just now stepping outdoors and starting to shoot a little bit and wanting to get that cinematic look, this is going to help you a ton. Hey everybody, my name is Sean Seymour and I do videos about photography and technology and product reviews. Sometimes it's frustrating stuff, sometimes it's cool stuff, but hopefully it's all new to you. And if it is, please hit that subscribe button down there in the bottom right hand corner and join me for more of this kind of content. I'm going to assume that you already know about f-stop and that you already know about shutter speed and how it kind of relates to the amount of light that gets through your lens and is eventually recorded by your sensor. If you don't, and if you need a little bit of a tutorial on that, or you want to learn more about f-stop, I'll put the link up here. I'll also put the link in the description below. So if you want more knowledge about that, just take a look at those videos. They'll help you a lot, and they're very easy videos to follow. So why do you need a neutral density filter? In video, you're going to try and follow that golden rule, which is if you're shooting at a frame rate of 24 frames per second, you're going to have a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. If you're shooting a frame rate of 60, then you're going to have your shutter speed be 1/120th of a second. We don't get to play around with the shutter speed like you would with photography. In photography, if we go outdoors and it doesn't matter to the shot that we're shooting, we can just go ahead and up the shutter speed to reduce the amount of light that gets recorded by the sensor. In video, we don't get to do that. Your shutter speed is fixed based on the frame rate that you're shooting. So you might ask yourself, why is it when I go outside and I shoot with my iPhone or my Android, my video looks, it's there and it's exposed right and everything else. Why do I need to worry about that? What it's doing is it's increasing the shutter speed, and when it increases the shutter speed, it's going to cause your video to look a little bit digitalized and look a little weird. Our natural eye is right around 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, somewhere in there, which causes a little bit of motion blur. You can see it in my hand going across the screen. That's why I keep doing this. I really am doing this for a reason, right? When your shutter speed is up too high, you don't get that motion blur, and it makes it look very digital, very weird. So that's why in video we have to stick to a certain shutter speed for the frame rate that we're shooting. If we can't manipulate the shutter speed to take out light, then we are only left with our aperture. And if we want to create some cinematic, cool looking stuff, we're trying to do something at maybe 24 frames per second, and our aperture, we want a shallow depth of field of, say, f-stop of 1.8. Well, you can't reach that when you're outdoors unless you use a neutral density filter, which is where neutral density filters come into play. What is an ND filter? I think the best analogy is a pair of sunglasses for your camera. Dude, I look pretty cool. They reduce the amount of light that goes into your lens so that you can actually shoot at that cinematic 24 frames per second. There are two types of neutral density filters that we're going to talk about. One is called a fixed neutral density filter, which literally is what it sounds like. It is a fixed amount of light that it reduces. So if I have a 6-stop neutral density filter, it's removing exactly 6 stops of light. And then there's a variable neutral density filter, which you can adjust and change the amount of light that it reduces. If you go online, what you'll read is that variable neutral density filters are supposed to be more flexible. I personally don't think so. I think that they come with some things that make it very difficult for new folks who are new to video or new to photography. It gives them one more thing that they have to think about. As you adjust and the variable neutral density filter starts getting darker, things start happening. First of all, it has something called cross polarization. Cross polarization is just a fancy term for we're going to get darker on the outer edges, and we're not going to do it in a very uniformed way. We might actually darken this corner and not these two corners, right? That's not good for your video. You don't want this corner dark and this corner not dark, or this corner dark and this corner dark and these two corners not dark. You don't want that. You want a uniformed, nice, controlled reduction of light. The other thing that can happen with your variable ND filters is as you spin it, you might overspin it. And if you overspin it, you get into an area where a lot of weird things are going to start happening. And if you don't know that you've overspun it and gone past, it will not be something that you're like, oh, this is obviously what I did, until you know, oh, I went past. I talked a little bit about color shift, but just let me tell you that as you get darker, you may see a color shift in your filter. The other thing you'll notice is that neutral density filters come in all shapes and sizes and in strengths. So we'll talk a little bit more about strength when I get to the chart. This might be a neutral density filter for a drone. There's neutral density filters for things like the Osmo Pocket series. There's neutral density filters for the iPhone and Android. There's neutral density filters for cameras and camera lenses. On most filters, you're going to see a filter size which is expressed in millimeters. So in this particular filter here, this is a 67 millimeter filter for my lens right there. All of these filters are made to match the equipment that you're using, so just take a look for the equipment that you're using, whether it be a drone or some other kind of camera, and match it up. I'm sure you can find it online. I do have some neutral density filters in the description below, so if you're interested in those, just check them out. All right, the last thing about neutral density filters as far as what they are, don't get caught up in the numbers. Don't get caught up in the optical density or the ND factor or any of that other stuff. Just focus in on the f-stop, so the number of stops that are of light that are reduced. That's the most important number to pay attention to when you're dealing with neutral density filters. Let's take a quick look at this chart. Now, if you go online and you're looking for a chart, you're probably going to run across thousands of charts for photographers. All of those charts are pretty much useless for videographers because they all work with shutter speed. I created a chart that is just for video, and it's based on your frame rate and your desired f-stop. Here you can see that I want to shoot a frame rate of 24 frames per second. That means I have to have a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second, or 50. The desired f-stop that I want is 1.8. The reason for that is I want a shallow depth of field because I want to create some of a more cinematic look. And I'm in bright sunlight, so I've got tons of light and I can't reduce it. Neutral density filter. What kind of neutral density filter do I need? If you go over on the chart and you look at this 24 frames per second, you go over to a 1.8, then I drop down and you'll see that I need a 6-stop neutral density filter, or what's called an ND64. Let's say that I want to shoot 60 frames per second because I want to shoot some slow-mo. Well, if I go on to this chart again, you'll see that at 60 frames per second, my shutter speed is going to be 1/120th of a second, or 120. And I go over to 1.8. Now I only need a neutral density filter that has a reduction of 5 stops, or an ND32. So why did I recommend to just get the ND64 or the 6-stop if sometimes I'm going to shoot slow-mo? The reason why is because I can still shoot slow-mo with my 6-stop filter. I just need to increase my ISO by 1 stop. I'm 1 stop short one stop short when I move my shutter speed up to 1/20th of a second. Then when I go back to shooting 24 frames per second, all I need to do is bring my ISO back down to 100 and I'm good to go for shooting 24 frames per second. So there is why I recommend that 6-stop filter if that's the only filter you're going to carry in your bag, because it's really flexible for people outdoors shooting video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that like button down below. Please also subscribe to the channel for more of this kind of content. Hopefully, by applying an ND filter and going outside, you're able to still shoot at 24 frames per second and maintain that cinematic look with a shallow depth of field. Hopefully, I've given you a recommendation of the right filter to use outdoors if you're only going to carry one in your bag. And hey, until I see you on the next video, please don't overexpose anything outside and keep it simple. As a new person to video, you might not want to dive in. No, me. Why would I even say that? Just go with it. Be you. Be you. I'm me. Okay, this is me. I'm me. You're you. I'm me. I'm gonna be myself, not you. Just be you. You be you. I be me. It's ridiculous. God, it's a good thing I don't do drugs. And let's just assume I didn't say that D word. Do I dare? Do I dare try my sunglasses? They're dirty as hell. Sunglasses for your camera, bro. Yeah. So far, so good. We're doing good so far. And no, I don't wear both of these at the same time. God. Oh, okay. Snap 2. We're out of battery. Oh my God.